The money meant to save a life vanished into paradise, leaving a fracture that might never heal. When I tapped the send button on my banking app, $10,000 vanished. It wasn't just numbers shifting, it was everything. Hope, sacrifice. My brother's surgery, his future, depended on it. But then I got the call, and the dream evaporated like mist. He's in the Maldives, laughing under the sun with the money meant to save him. There's a cavernous ache in my chest where trust once thrived. I lie awake, tortured by the thought of him lounging by the ocean while I grasp at the shadows of sleep. I've not yet confronted him, choosing silence over chaos, but I feel it brewing inside me, an untamed storm. That unspoken tension between us grows louder each day, a countdown to an inevitable eruption. It's only a matter of time before this fragile facade shatters, leaving nothing but the raw, unvarnished truth. The weekend slumps lazily across my shoulders as I slump into the worn fabric of the couch, phone cradled in my hand. It's one of those afternoons that drags, where the minutes creep like they're suppressed under a haze of heat. I scroll absent-mindedly through my feed, thumb flicking screenward with a practiced indifference. The usual mixture: staged happiness, muted congratulations, muted outrage. As I pause, my eyes narrow on a familiar face in unfamiliar surroundings. My heart stutters, then drops with a heavy thud somewhere near my stomach. The world narrows to a single photograph, tagged bright with my brother's name. He flashes a grin that's all tooth and triumph, soaked in the sunlight and sea spray of the Maldives. A jet ski roars beneath him, hanging mid-wave. I trace the outlines of his happiness with my thumb, resentment boiling just beneath my skin. That grin, that unrestrained, blissful expression, the kind reserved for moments of unburdened freedom. It's a peace I'd been laboring to secure for him, surrendering my own gratification, piece by painstaking piece. Money I didn't have, hard-won and handcrafted from my own dreams, rerouted into his. My breath quickens, like a paper fanned to flames. A pressure builds behind my eyes, something molten wanting to spill out. Betrayal tastes bitter, metallic, on my tongue, every swallow of air thickening with disbelief. Why'd he tag me? It feels like a direct slap, a purposeful jab right at the softest part of me. The part that had believed in his promises, in his frantic phone calls, those late-night confessions where desperation snaked through the receiver with all the urgency of a siren. It was supposed to be straightforward, help pull him from the brink of collapse, piece back together what had been shattered. His excuses spin in my brain, gaining momentum, dragging all rationality with them. I fling my phone down, the hollow sound echoing in the room. My fists clench, nails digging into my palms, a desperate grasping for control. My breaths, shallow and fast, match the rhythm of a drumming heart. How could he? I mutter, voice cutting through the still air. How could he do this? The question isn't meant for the empty room, but it bounces off walls, begging for an answer. I hear only silence, icy and indifferent. In slow motion, I reach for the phone again, compelled by a pull I can't resist. The photo lingers, still raw and mocking. His happiness in contrast to my rising anger is a cruel juxtaposition. My thumb hovers over the comments, a futile hope hiding in the corners of my frustration that maybe, just maybe, this isn't as it seems. But deep down, a truth gnaws at my insides. Trust once broken doesn't stitch back easily. The betrayal grows roots, firm and stubborn, between my ribs, branching into a fury I can't yet name. As disbelief shifts to full-blown indignation, I know this moment is only the beginning. The subtle hum of the city outside is nothing more than a distant purr, as I sit cross-legged on the bed, fingers tracing the pattern on the worn-out comforter. It's all backdrop noise against the harsh spotlight of my own thoughts. The room's dimness cloaks me like a secret, a dramatic irony to the blazing realization that's searing its way across my mind. His voice echoes relentlessly, transforming every wall into a conspirator. The way he spoke, charged with that burning edge of desperation, keeps ricocheting within me, demanding my full attention. "You gotta help me," he'd said, the words tumbling out, raw and urgent. What struck me then as honesty now feels strangely performative. My skin tingles at the memory, a sensation of wrongness whispering up my spine. I close my eyes, hear myself question aloud, the voice almost foreign in its tremor. Had I misunderstood his desperation, or was his charm just that convincing? Sitting here, under this dull light, I realized the fear trickling in is not about the uncertain future. It's the regret, the possibility that those moments of sincerity were cloaked in deceit. How had I let it slip by? My chest tightens with a kind of betrayal that's too personal, too intimate. Each creak of the building feels ominous, a reminder of the cracks within my judgment. Images flash behind my tired eyes. Him sitting across from me at the table, hands gesticulating wildly, drawing me into his world, his chaos. Every gesture seemed calculated, meticulously aligned with his pleas, weaving a fragile tapestry of need that ensnared me so effortlessly. But now, the strands unravel in my mind, each thread stained with doubt. Why hadn't I seen it then? The question unspools with agonizing slowness. I sit, a statue of doubt and self-rebuke, solidified by my own inability to discern the truth from his elaborate fiction. There's an art to deception. He wielded it with the kind of finesse that demanded belief. Yet here I am, dissecting every word, each syllable a reminder of my own blind faith. A bitter laugh escapes me, a ragged sound swallowed by the emptiness surrounding me. It's funny, almost laughable, how easily trust can transmute into something bitter, casting long shadows of suspicion where light once resided. I breathe deeply, the intake sharp against the quiet, and find a strange comfort in the silence that follows. There's a decision made in this calm, a resolution forming quietly beneath the surface. Confrontation. It simmers, gathers strength, a quiet thunder promising release. Opening my eyes, I stare into the soft darkness, finding my own reflection in the window pane. The city outside, alive and indifferent, seems to echo my resolve, the faint twinkle of distant lights a testament to clarity that can only come from finally facing the truth. My fingers were cold, numb against the screen, the room around me vanishing as I dialed his number. I couldn't hear anything except the pounding of my heart, each pulse resounding like a desperate signal in the void. The phone rang once, twice, 5 times. Each unanswered ring was a detonation in my chest, transforming urgency into a raw, open wound of betrayal. When his voice finally broke through, the casual ease in his tone struck me like ice water. It was as if he'd just returned from a day at the beach, not a care in the world, while I was drowning. No, gasping, for clarity, for relief, for anything solid to hold on to. "Hey there," he said, the lazy warmth of the words entirely misplaced, almost cruel in its normalcy. How could he sound so free when I was lost in this storm? "Where were you?" The words came out ragged, scraped from the bottom of my being. There was a pause, a small hiccup in the call that pounded in my ears. "I'm just here, hanging out." "Why?" he replied, and the nonchalance suffocated me. Each word from his mouth was fuel to the fire of my mounting rage. "Just hanging out," I repeated, my voice climbing higher, teetering on the edge of something I couldn't control. Could he hear the hysteria? Did he care? "Yeah," he continued, the smoothness of his voice impenetrable. "Is something wrong? Was something wrong? Was that some kind of twisted joke?" My grip tightened around the phone, my knuckles whitening with the grip of my frustration. I was adrift in a sea of my own making, and he stood there, on solid ground, untouched and untouched. "You don't get it, do you?" I breathed, trying to wrestle my emotions into some semblance of coherence. "I've been calling and calling, imagining every possible nightmare." His silence was louder than any response could have been, reverberating through the quiet space between us. "Why didn't you answer?" I spat, the demands laced with a vulnerable anger that felt foreign, even to me. Finally, I could hear the faint crack of his resolve, a tiny hint of something fraying at the edges. I didn't realize. The phone was on silent. Silent gave him peace, but it left me in chaos. Suddenly, the words felt fragile, as if speaking them might shatter something deeper between us than just this moment. But they were already out there, hanging in the air, echoing back at me with a truth I couldn't ignore. "Next time," I whispered, voice controlled and dangerous. "Next time don't leave me in the dark. You don't know how it feels." The call ended, not abruptly, but gently, with a mutual, unspoken understanding that silence was now the louder truth between us. The air in the room felt dense, like breathing through a thick veil of tension. I sat across from him at the table, my pulse throbbing at my temples, a taut string waiting to snap. He seemed almost relaxed, leaning back in his chair, one foot casually perched on his knee. My words trembled at the edge of my tongue, held back by a blend of disbelief and bitterness. I started with a whisper, a vain attempt at diplomacy. Why? The word barely made it out, but it rippled through me like the first crack of thunder in a storm. He shrugged, his eyes skimming over mine as if I were some minor inconvenience he hadn't decided to attend to yet. I needed a break. Things were getting to me. There it was. The facade of complacency infuriating and unjust. A break. My voice carried a brittle edge. With the money that was supposed to save you? How do you escape from a life you've already given up on? His gaze finally settled on me, an unreadable calm that only stoked the fire brewing within me. I didn't ask for your help, he replied, almost nonchalant, as if stating some mundane truth. Something inside me snapped, a crack in the dam of muted emotions. But you needed it. My voice rose, tears stinging my eyes. You were drowning. We both knew it. And hell, everyone, did what we could to pull you out, but you just let go. He sighed, brushing a hand through his hair, the gesture full of a frustrated kind of patience that made my blood boil. Did you ever think that maybe I want to figure this out on my own? The room seemed smaller, the walls closing in. No, I said, assertion solidifying in me. No, you just ran away when things were hard. We all have demons, but you. Enough. His voice cut through mine. His eyes flared, kindling an anger that mirrored back my own. I didn't want your dream for me. Maybe the way I did it was wrong. Fine. But that's not why I left. The space between us felt insurmountable, years of shared childhood buried under a chasm of unspoken disappointments and unmet expectations. You used to fight, I said softly, a quiet plea beneath the accusation. What happened? His expression shifted then, a fleeting glimpse of vulnerability before the mask slipped back. I think I might be fighting now. The admission was like a knife, twisting. Silence settled between us, heavy with the weight of words unspoken and the inevitability of choices made. The seconds ticked by, slow and agonizing. The gravity of his defiance fell into the quiet spaces of the room. I couldn't bring myself to speak again, the truth of our strained bond painfully vivid in the dim light. This moment, the simmering heat of unresolved conflict and raw emotion, was far from an ending. It was the fracture point, the place where everything might shatter or rebuild. The door slammed behind me, a thunderous exclamation point to a conversation that should never have happened. But I was out of words, out of patience. Outside, the cold slapped my cheeks, a mocking contrast to the fury blazing inside. Even the chill of the night couldn't numb the heat of rage coursing through me, each breath a violent reminder of trust shattered. I stood there, the world around me eerily silent, as if nature itself hesitated to intrude. The street was deserted, the distant hum of a passing car only heightening the stillness. My thoughts, though, were anything but quiet, a cacophony of betrayal and disbelief ricocheting through my mind. Why hadn't I seen it before? How could I have been so blind? Under the harsh glow of the streetlight, clouds of my breath dissipated, carrying with them fractured pieces of betrayed loyalty. I remembered the laughter, the moments of warmth, all now tainted with a bitterness that I couldn't swallow. It felt like dying a little, letting go of those moments, but I couldn't rebuild on lies. Not again. I jammed my hands into my pockets, fingers curling into fists around nothing but air and frustration. The pavement was damp, the air crisp with the promise of rain, yet I stayed rooted there, unwilling to move, unable to face what awaited back inside. The silence, thick and suffocating, pregnant with unspoken accusations and the unbearable weight of what we used to be. The reality of loss sank in, heavy and unrelenting. It gripped my heart with icy claws, an ironic match to the invisible fires burning within. This wasn't just about us, about her. It was a chasm opening beneath everything familiar and steady, swallowing the remnants of familial love. Where do we go from here? I whispered to no one, the question swallowed by the void. My voice was stripped bare, the raw edge slicing through the quiet. This was the end of something, and the beginning of something else, something darker, something I couldn't yet name. It was then that resolve trickled in, threading through the anger, a fragile but undeniable dawn. I wouldn't let this define me. I wouldn't let this betrayal carve me into something brittle and bitter. Step by step, I could find my own way. Her choice had drawn a line I couldn't cross again, but it was time for me to choose too. One last look back at the closed door, compacted tightly with finality. There was no going back now, only forward into the uncertain but necessary newness of decisions I would make alone. I turned, each step carrying me deeper into the night, the cold now an ally, purging and pure. The night air clung to me like a second skin, heavy and restless. I walked with no destination, each step a metronome to the chaos in my head. The moon hung low, a solitary witness to the turmoil that churned inside. The streets were deserted, shadows clutching at the dim pools of streetlight, as if they too knew to stay hidden. I tried to focus, tried to sift through the knot of emotions that entwined around my heart. Anger surged first, hot and impulsive, rippling through my veins. How could he have done it? Betrayed everything, everyone? My brother, the echo of my own blood. His choices cast long shadows over our past and set fire to any semblance of a future we might have had. But even as anger raged, it softened too quickly into something I hesitated to name. Was it pity? A sorrow that chilled my bones more than the night ever could. A car rushed past, wind from its passing a gossamer whisper against my face, and I paused, eyes tracing its tail lights as they disappeared, a red smear swallowed by the distance. How does one piece together the shards of loyalty and blood when their edges cut deeper than any blade? The question was a dull drumbeat in my mind, unrelenting. It echoed with every step I took, with every breath that fogged the chill air in front of me. Beneath the anger and sorrow was regret, corralling my thoughts into a fenced pasture where guilt grazed heavily. There were things I hadn't said, words that sat lodged in my throat like sharp stones. Words that could have bridged the growing canyon between us before it became a chasm no words could traverse. I should have seen it, the way he was spiraling. But life had its distractions, its ceaseless churn. Too late, always too late. The path led me to a small park, nestled quietly between rows of sleeping houses. I sat on a wooden bench, the cold seeping through my jeans, grounding me, if only briefly. The sky was clear, stars daringly cast their light despite the encroaching darkness. I wondered if they mocked me, suspended effortlessly, untouched by earthly woes. I envied their clarity, their place in the universe untangled by mistakes. The wind rustled the bare branches above, a soft, mournful song. I shivered, not from the cold, but from an ache that rooted itself deep in my soul. My brother's absence, his choices, left a void that bled into every part of me. Yet through the ache, a small sprout of reluctant acceptance unfurled. I didn't know how to heal or help, didn't know how to forgive. But sitting there, under the indifferent sky, I knew one thing. I wasn't ready to give up. Not on him, not on myself. Somehow, amidst the wreckage, I'd find a way to navigate the twisted path ahead. The familiar, gentle creak of the floorboards greets me as I push open the front door, a sound that's comforted and taunted me for years. The house is dim, cloaked in the quiet that usually makes it a sanctuary after chaotic days. But today, it feels oppressive, each shadow clinging to my thoughts as I settle at the small wooden table. My fingertips glide over its worn surface, tracing the grooves carved by years of meals, conversations, and silent mornings like this one. I take a deep breath, the air heavy with the scent of the lunch I never finished. Every inhale feels tangled with thoughts I can't untangle, emotions that won't let me rest. Across the table, the empty chair seems accusatory, echoing with words that hang unsaid. The echoes of 1,000 small betrayals, perhaps real or perhaps imagined, weave between us in the silence. I place my head in my hands, elbows digging into the oak as if grounding myself in this moment would somehow distill clarity from confusion. Forgiveness, estrangement, conditional reconciliation. The words swirl like smoke, circling each other, refusing to fit neatly into their rightful places. Part of me knows they are threads of one tapestry, even as they fight to separate, pulling me in fractured directions. Would a severed lifeline truly hurt less than the burned bridges burdening my heart? The question lingers, a stone dropped into the still pond of my mind, sending ripples outward to touch every doubt, every hope, and every fear. In this room, the past and future blend in an uncomfortable union, the weight of choice pressing harder with each ticking second. I try to envision the next steps. Forgiveness feels like a compromise, each gesture tender but tentative, like touching a bruise uncertain of its tenderness. Could I live with perpetual echoes of old scars, tentative in my affection, his presence a constant reminder of the hurt that runs deep? Facing the familiar warmth of his eyes and the memory of what used to be, would it give peace or simply mask the pain? Or estrangement, a word cold and unsparing. Imagining forever apart from the laughter, the shared history, the intertwined lives, chills my bones. Could I carry the emptiness? I picture the absence, stark against the memories of holidays filled with warmth, celebrations punctuated by smiles. It's a void I'd wear like armor, at once protecting and imprisoning. Conditional reconciliation sits somewhere in between, a compromise as delicate as glass. Trust, but verify, reconnect, but safeguard. Each condition a barrier to both hurt and intimacy. Straddling the line of independence and connection until the dance of requirements leaves us weary, possibly depleting the love we're trying to salvage. The weight of the decision settles in my chest, a stubborn presence refusing to be ignored. Eyes stinging with fatigue, I push back from the table, its scrape echoing like a punctuation mark to this internal debate. The paths unravel like a tangled web, each holding its own consequences. The tension hangs heavy, a presence that won't let me linger here too long. For now, I'm standing on the precipice of the unknown, the next step wrapped in uncertainty, promising either liberation or regret. Her laughter used to ring through our world like wind chimes caught in a summer breeze, sweet, unpredictable, and somehow always there. It's a memory I tread on carefully, afraid it might break. But today, like a whisper woven through the cold wind outside, it finds me again. I close my eyes and lean back against the old armchair that's been my anchor these past few months. The room is dim, the murmur of city noise pushing softly against the window panes, but it's not what I'm hearing. Instead, I find myself transported to that small patch of grass by the lake. We were just kids, wrapped up in a world that belonged to no one but us. "Tag! You're it!" she'd screamed, her voice bright and mischievous, the word lingering in the air even as she bolted away. My feet had pounded the earth, driven by nothing more than the pure, unadulterated joy of the chase. We'd run until the world dissolved into nothing but breathless giggles and lazy, sun-warmed afternoons. Now, the memory of her grin forms a ghost of a smile on my lips, a warmth unfurling slowly in my chest. There we were, sprawled on the ground, the sky vast and endless above us. She'd turned to me, her hair a wild halo, her eyes dancing with the life we hadn't yet complicated. "Let's never grow up," she'd whispered conspiratorially, as if we could make time pause with just a promise. "But I want to drive," I'd countered, earning a scoff and a playful punch on the arm. "You can be Peter Pan," she had said, and we'd burst into laughter over the absurdity of it all, of staying forever young together. The memory flickers, leaving behind a tenderness I hadn't expected to find again. It feels like holding a fragile glass figure, beautiful but on the edge of shattering. And yet, the embers of what once was spark weakly against the cold of reality. Even as disappointments layer over our adult selves, these roots we set down so long ago refuse to wither completely. Opening my eyes, I let the moment slip reluctantly into the present, the dusty corners of the room settling around me once more. The ache of lost friendships lies quietly beneath it all, softened by the brief reminder of innocence and endless possibilities. For the first time in weeks, there's a sense of something other than regret nestling there. Maybe, just maybe, that shared history isn't just an echo fading into silence. Perhaps it's a thread waiting to be picked up again, offering the faintest hint that in another moment, with enough courage, we might revisit the garden that once bloomed brightly in both our hearts. I sit at my desk, the dim light painting long shadows on the walls, and the silence in the room feels heavy, like an uninvited companion. My fingers hover over the keyboard, hesitant yet yearning. I've resolved to write him a letter. Not an olive branch. I'm not there yet, but a real attempt to articulate the tangled mess of hurt and hope caught in my chest. First, it's the pain that spills out, raw and unfiltered. It pours onto the screen like a dam breaking, Emotions I've whispered quietly to myself, now staring back at me in stark, unyielding text. Each keystroke feels like tearing a bandage away, exposing wounds that never quite healed but festered, buried under layers of unresolved silence. Do you remember when everything changed? I type, the words hesitating before landing on the page. The memory feels like a ghost, always hovering at the edges of my consciousness. I described the fracture, how the invisible fault lines grew, spiderwebbed through every interaction until neither of us could see the other. There's a tremble in my hands as I confess, admitting the fears that kept me silent and small. My breath hitches, a familiar tremor of vulnerability, and I pause to let the moment breathe, to steady the torrent swirling inside. But this isn't just about reopening wounds. No, I need this to be about healing too, about trying to find a way back, not to what was, but to something new. I hope. The words are there, fragile yet insistent. We can learn to hear each other again. Really listen this time. Articulating hope feels like walking a tightrope, each step tentative as I balance between what we've lost and what might be regained. I imagine these lines as bridges, tenuous and swaying, but perhaps strong enough to close the distance between us. There's a vulnerability in this, a willingness to chance rejection for something worth the risk. My eyes sting and I blink rapidly, the emotions running raw and unchecked. And so I write. I continue, allowing the sentence to unfold without the safety net of certainty, not knowing if these words will bridge the chasm or float across like whispers on a stormy night. A part of me wants to stop right here, to preserve this moment of unresolved ambiguity, of hope hanging like a trembling leaf in the wind. But I press on, feeling the weight of every letter as I type, reaching for closure, for the slender thread of possibility. I end the letter with a simple truth. I miss us. As the words settle, I linger over the save icon, my finger hovering, suspended in the stillness. This feels like standing on the edge of something vast, the known world behind me and the potential of an open horizon ahead. The silence in the room seems a little less suffocating now, lighter in the wake of the words that have finally found their place. I close my laptop softly, the future uncertain, yet touched with echoes of hope, a tentative offering of peace to the ghost between us.